Okay, next up here you can see it. So we've talked about the two big building blocks, leafy greens with bitter foods for your liver, and then also some low starch vegetables, lots of colors and cruciferous. Next up is protein. Okay, why does it matter? Protein is really important to support your satiety and your metabolism. Now, most of our body is actually made out of protein. If we don't get enough, we don't have the right building blocks. And then the body thinks it is starving. And what it then does, it actually starts to hold on to weight rather than lose it. So it might be counterintuitive. You might be cutting down your little piece of salmon or your tofu at lunch, thinking that you want to cut down calories, but if the body doesn't get enough protein, it thinks it's starving and it will hold on to your weight. Protein is really important to support your thyroid hormones. They're the ones that are important for your metabolism, weight loss, energy, mood, lots of different things in the body. They are made out of protein and iodine and other things, but protein is a really important building block. So if you have a little bit of that belly fat, you want to get more protein to try and lose that. Another important reason why protein is important is that our neurotransmitters, so the things like dopamine and serotonin, which you might know from, they make you happy, they make you motivated, they are also made out of protein. So if you don't get the right building blocks, then the brain just simply cannot make them. And you might start to get symptoms of ADHD or depression because your brain just doesn't have enough dopamine or serotonin. However, a note of caution, if you're a cancer patient, you might have to lower that and you want to talk to a knowledgeable practitioner. Long term, you might want to add 1 or 2 days a week where you lower your protein content very targetedly, where you just try and only eat vegetables and some good fats, and drop your protein to do something called protein cycling, which has been shown to be really good for cellular renewal, because when your body is starved of the protein for that day, it then has to ramp up its renewal. It kind of eats up everything, it gobbles up everything old and mutated, and then can replenish it. When you then start to eat it again, it can make new cells. It's important to do this cyclical and not just starve yourself of protein all the time. Unless you have cancer, might be a different scenario. But most of the time, most of my patients that I see, they're chronically deprived and they have this belly fat and they're constantly trying to starve themselves, and they're constantly, they're like, but why do I have this belly layer? What's wrong with me? Why am I tired? Why is my hair falling out? So most people are chronically not getting enough protein. So this is a really important one. And there are a few rules. I don't really want this course to be about calculating much. I don't want you to go into your kitchen and start to calculate your meals and calories. But if you're really, some people just have lost they don't really know how to feel hunger anymore and they need to reset. So it might make sense to just for once calculate your protein intake and write it down. There's a section in your workbook where you can write down your weight and your goal weight, and then you can calculate what you should be eating, how much protein. But as a rule of thumb, I want you to just have 2 large handfuls a day. 1 large handful with your main brunch. We'll talk about the meal timing later, and then 1 big handful with your later meal of the day. And if you have a snack, which we don't like, we'll talk about that later as well, then base it on protein as well, especially if you haven't been eating protein for a while, if you want to kickstart your weight loss, if you want to just tone up a little, protein is your best friend. Okay, so there are different types of protein foods, and I know that a lot of you are maybe vegan or vegetarian. And I just want you to stay very open-minded. If a lot of you are, just drop me a message in the Facebook group and I will make special videos for vegan and vegetarian. Right now, I'm just looking at an overall healthy diet. So there are animal protein sources, there are vegetarian and vegan protein sources. They both have pros and cons. Ideally, you have a combination of the two because they have different building blocks in them that we can't get from either or. So let's get to this one. There's something called lysine-arginine ratio. I don't know if you heard of this, but both are important. And they're called amino acids. So our protein is actually made up of different amino acids, different building blocks, and we need all of them. And I'm just pointing out two because they can often be thrown off if people go into a vegan or vegetarian diet without knowing about it. So lysine is something that is really important, in particular to turn off viruses. So if we have a virus in the body, like Epstein-Barr or any other virus, then it can be stronger and can replicate more if there is a lack of lysine and if there's too much arginine. So it's also cold sore viruses, things like that. Arginine, on the other hand, is really important for our cardiovascular health. So we want both. We want it in a good balance. Lysine is mainly found in animal products, fish, meat, dairy. Arginine is mainly found in vegan protein sources like nuts and seeds, and also things like coconut milk and flakes and oats, things that usually vegan people kind of rely upon. There are only a few that are fairly balanced from a vegan perspective. They're soy, beans, and lentils. Now you have to make sure that if you eat, let's say if you're vegan and you eat a lot of nuts and seeds, and then you're eating tofu and beans and lentils and you think you're balancing it out, you're actually not balancing it out. You need to put something on the other side. So if you are vegan and you don't eat either cheese or eggs either, then you have to supplement with lysine to make sure that you get it back into balance. Another thing, so as I said, there are animal protein sources that are usually very clean. There are barely any carbs in there. Then there's some vegan protein sources that are fairly low carb, like nuts and seeds and lupine beans. But most chickpeas and beans and lentils are actually also at the same time fairly high in carbs. So I just want you to notice that and remember that going forward, because if you eat things like chickpeas and beans and lentils as your protein source, you need to be aware they at the same time also count as your carb source, which we will get to in a moment.